democracy in talk radio, of, for, and by you, the people. Live nationwide and streaming live at lesliemarshallshow.com.
Okay.
Once every 4 years, Team USA brings together our nation's most exceptional athletes for the summer. In Paris this year, these Olympians will also represent some of our country's amazing clothing manufacturers. Ralph Lauren kept it made in America when crafting this year's opening and closing ceremony attire, drawing on the talents of apparel companies across the U.S., including Ferrara Manufacturing, Andari Fashion Incorporated, Shanico Wool Company, Rancourt & Company, Rogue Industries, and Saytex USA. But the Olympics aren't the only place you can find Made in America clothes. Some of our other great apparel makers have been on a winning streak as well. San Francisco-based American Giant just announced they will offer a line of Made in USA shirts for $12.98 at 1,700 Walmart locations. Meanwhile, companies like Vermont's Darn Tough and Alabama's Zacano make metal-worthy socks in the United States. And we can't forget about Made in USA brands like American Trench, Devium, Vermont Flannel, Duckworth, American Roots, LC King Manufacturing, All American Clothing Company, and a surprising number of others. To those who may have assumed the American apparel industry was dead, this should be a wake-up call. Despite decades of policy aimed at encouraging offshoring, hundreds of American companies continue to make high-quality apparel in the United States. Imagine what would happen if more big retailers and policymakers refocused their energy on Made in America too. It's time to put American makers back on the medal stand.
Hey there, America. I'm Leslie Marshall. I'm Made in the USA. And the things that we buy should be too. It helps the economy. We're going to be talking about that and other things with our guest, Scott Paul. Scott is president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. And the AAM is a partnership established by some of America's leading manufacturers and the United Steelworkers Union. And for nearly 2 decades, Scott and the AAM have worked to make American manufacturing a top of mind issue for voters. And when you look at the polls and you look at the results and you look at the legislation, they've done it. And they continue to do it because they need to, because we're not where we need to be yet, right? They've done this with not just, making it a top of mind issue for voters and national leaders, but they've done it through an effective advocacy, innovative research, and savvy PR strategy. More than a pleasure to have back with us, Scott Paul. And in the meantime, folks, while you're listening, while you're watching, please be sure on X to follow the AAM at Keep It Made in USA. A lot of good information there. Scott Paul, follow him at Scott Paul AAM. He posts information you need as well. And you got to go to americanmanufacturing.org, their website, because you can find all these great companies in our great nation that make these wonderful products made right here in the USA. Scott, thank you for joining us. Welcome back. Always a pleasure to have you with us.
Leslie, it's so great to be with you. Thank you.
We many of us, we were just talking off there about the Olympics. You get up early to watch wrestling. Mark was talking about his girls getting into it. I remember as a kid watching it. And even on vacation, my husband, my kids, and I, we're watching it. And, for most people who aren't knocking somebody who wanted to take care of her mental health, for most people, Team USA is, it makes us, proud. It makes us more patriotic. And it reminds us that we are all in this together, right? That we are, a union, we are a nation. And when it comes to the Olympics and a team, we're all fighting for the same thing, which is a win and gold, right? Or silver or bronze or all three. Team USA is made in the USA. Those people watching saw the video. Those people listening heard the audio. live stream viewers see and hear. And we just saw that for a couple of minutes in length. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that video. Let's talk about why
Yeah.
it's important for people to see that and what it should be resonating with the American people and the American voter.
Yeah, you're right. And what you said reminded me of something the basketball player Kevin Durant just said, which was like, when talking about America, he's like, yeah, there's a lot of messed up things that happen, but there's a lot of great things that happen too. And that's why I love this country. And so, yeah, I think the opening and clothing ceremony attire is an example of that because there was a time more than a decade ago where a lot of the attire our athletes were wearing for the ceremonies were outsourced. And Ralph Lauren, the designer, kind of got caught, shouted out on that. But I will say to his great credit, they're like, you know what? It's going to be made in America from here on out. And I think that is what excites me. So I'm wearing something they did from 2016 from the 2016 Olympics, I think. And so yeah, we were able to track, and Ralph Lauren did a great job of this, of laying out all the suppliers of the gear that the athletes wore when they were on the River Seine. And when you saw LeBron James, was it Coco Graf? I can't remember, who are flag bearers, but the rest of the team,
Yes.
and all of that from head to toe was manufactured in the United States, from Los Angeles to Maine, New York City. Really, really amazing stories. And
And
it just, yeah,
and Scott, we're going to get to some of those stories, but I'm so glad that you guys, that we have this video. I'm so glad that we have these stories to talk about, because when you watch France, right? And Paris is known to be the fashion capital of the world. And everybody was talking about how Louis Vuitton did this, and they make their products in France. And I mean, they, everything were French designers. It's important to put that out there. And your point to Ralph Lauren, even though he got caught and he changed his ways, Ralph Lauren is an American designer, an American institution, and a much more affordable designer than some of the designers we see, like Louis Vuitton overseas. I know some people might say, Leslie, you kidding me? Have you seen the prices? No, you can get some decent stuff at like a Macy's, Ralph Lauren, that, is a, different level in the designer food chain, if you will. So I'm so glad that we're talking about this. And, when you talk about what people throughout the world are seeing, commentators are talking about it. They're talking about what people are wearing. They're talking about who made, these outfits. And, if other countries are honoring their homegrown designers
that's
and they're
right.
making their products in their nation, then the leader of the free world and a beacon of democracy should be doing that and leading the charge on that as well.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so cool, is that, yeah, there's probably very few people that rise to the level of success and kind of brand prestige that Ralph Lauren has here in the United States, and also kind of how Americana it is, right? It's style, but it's also got that American flair. And so when he and his team, and they have high standards, and from talking to all of these suppliers, they're like, what Ralph Lauren demands is over the top in terms of quality, but they want a quality product and something that stands out and something that is built to last. To your point, that there may be a slightly higher price point in some cases, but you're not going to have to buy a new version of it every year or two. It's going to be with you for as long as you possibly
Yes.
want to wear it. And I'll just say, and I know we'll get to the stories, but just the pride that these owners have, and then that the workers have, to see, the fruits of their labor, watched by probably, what the opening ceremony is, 1.5 billion people around the world, to say, I sewed that, or I helped put that together
Yeah.
for the American athletes, and these, well-known names like LeBron James. That's extraordinary.
Yeah, and it ups that pride even more, and it does make everybody feel that they're a part of it, right? It's like that quilt, all the different colors, all the different threads, all the different fabric. Speaking of, let's talk about some stories. I love all of these stories, but let's start with Rancourt and Company. You know what? We have less than a minute. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll start talking about these companies. We'll talk about some other things. I also want to talk about the Manufacturing Report podcast that you host. So lots to come with Scott Paul. He is president of the AAM. Like I said, if you want to be a more conscientious consumer and you want to buy things that are made in this country, you want to buy things by people that are American that own these products. And, these small mom and pop companies, some are bigger mom and pop companies, but you want to support your neighbor. And it doesn't have to be across the street or in your state. You want to support them. Go to AmericanManufacturing.org, the website. On X, follow them at Keep It Made in USA, and follow Scott at Scott Paul AAM. We're going to take a quick break. Back with Scott, back with you. And hang on, because we've got some great stories of great American manufacturing success stories coming up right after this.
If you miss Leslie on TV this week, catch up at lesliemarshallshow.com.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes, their age, the way they speak? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for summer break
because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a single father of 2 who works 3
part-time jobs and still can't put enough food on the table?
Or maybe a mother who cleans offices at night,
hoping to find meeting leftovers to take home to her hungry family.
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing a job
and getting back on his feet.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
We are back. We are me, Leslie Marshall, and my former English teachers from grammar school and high school would cringe at my poor grammar there, right? Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, is our guest. And check them out, the website. We're talking about American-made products. We're talking about looking at Olympic athletes wearing American-made products and, breaking down who some of these companies are so that you can have a piece of not just the Olympics, but a piece of American pride, a piece of an American product manufactured in the United States, owned by Americans, supporting our economy. And that, to me, is true patriotism. The website is AmericanManufacturing.org. On X, follow them at the AAM at Keep It Made in USA, and follow Scott at Scott Paul AAM. Scott, thank you for holding. Welcome back. So before the break, we said we were going to start talking about some of these great companies. And I want to start about this shoe manufacturer, Rancourt and Company. They are a family-run shoe manufacturer. They have maintained their commitment to Made in America. They're a quality product, and they have a tradition, and for more than 50 years. And some people are just hearing about them now. I got to be honest, it wasn't 50 years ago I heard about them, but it wasn't just so recently. And the opening and closing ceremonies of the 2024 Paris Olympics, you can catch their shoes there. I know that your podcast, The Manufacturing Report, Scott, you actually interviewed recently the co-owner and president, Mike Rancourt, and he shared the process of creating these American-made shoes, which certainly are iconic because they're on the feet of Team USA and others at the opening and closing ceremonies. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have a question for you, Leslie. How easy do you think it is to keep white suede clean?
Can I tell you something? All right. All right. There's 3 things. All right. Thank God it was not after Labor Day, because I am a New England girl, and I can't remember the movie where the woman dies because she wears white shoes. And in college, we're all like, I get it. Okay. 2, white, and I'm wearing it today. White makes you look fatter. And yes, people, TV makes you look fatter. White makes you look fatter. I say this because like 90 some percent of the time when people meet me in person, they're like, you look much smaller in real life. It's like, because the camera adds weight and I'm overweight. So that makes me look even fatter. And then if you add white, like I'm wearing today, you'll hardly ever see me wearing white on TV unless the wardrobe department is hating me that day. So I'm thinking white. I know these people are in great shape, but white makes you look heavier. But the other thing, I was like, are you kidding me? Because not only with the brains and, just people walking around. No, I'm totally with you, Scott. I'm sorry. The fashion side of me was just like, why white?
So the white suede shoes, they stand out. I mean, talk about making a fashion statement. You're right. And they're bold and they're a conversation starter as you kind of raised. And Rancourt started out as a moccasin maker. Everybody knows about the Maine moccasins, right? Everybody, has
yes, I'm from Massachusetts.
Yeah,
I know those
exactly. The Maine mocks. And so that's how they started out, and they've evolved and they've made shoes for other makers too, and they've survived, and a lot of their other folks went offshore. But to make the white suede shoes, Mike Rancourt was like, we had never worked with the material like that because suede picks up dirt. It attracts dirt, and white, it shows dirt. And so they had to be, it was almost like it was a bio lab, basically, how they were having to put the shoes
Scott, was
together.
it his decision, the color, or no? Just the manufacturer? He was told, this is what we want.
They
this is
collaborated with the designers on what was possible and how to do it. But it was, and they helped it. They have their own supply chain and their sources and where they get the leather from in Chicago, and they go through this whole process. But yeah, it's like the architect and the engineers. You kind of have to work together to get it right. But it was he said it was a big challenge for the factory, and they got the orders, and then he said the largest shoe they had to make was a size 19 men's.
Is that LeBron?
Which would have been for one of the basketball players, either Joel Embiid or Anthony Davis. I don't know. We should.
I think they're breeding kids with bigger. My son is only 6'1". I say only compared to a LeBron James, and he's a size 13.
Yeah, Kevin Durant. I mean, there's a couple of possibilities, but it's got to be one of those basketball players, I think. And then the smallest size.
Mark near the mic, my executive producer. Mark is very tall. Mark, how tall are you? Are you 6'4"?
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have shoe molds hanging around for those those types
Exactly.
of sizes.
No,
No,
it's not
absolutely. Even when my son went over the 12-inch mark, the 1 foot mark, we couldn't. I remember we were at an ice skating rink, over the winter when we went to visit my family, as we do every December in Boston. Couldn't get skates, roller skating, sometimes difficulty, snowboard, you have to get your own boots because you can't rent, the bigger sizes. So I can imagine, they don't have that mold preset, especially.
Yeah, and they have to work pretty fast because some of these teams aren't named, right, until a few weeks before the games, and so they have to turn all this around and do it for the athletes. And I think there were like 600 members of the U.S. team, and they made some for the mass market too that people can buy. The smallest size, Leslie, that they made was a women's size 3, which I suspect had to be gymnast. Yeah, I think gymnast as well.
And please don't misunderstand. I'm being very honest. We have, like, if you go to like Nordstrom Rack, right? I used to be a 6.5. And when I got pregnant with my daughter in 2008, I went up to an 8 and went down to a 7.5. And there it is, sadly, because 6.5 was my favorite shoe size. And there were more shoes available in 6.5. However, now when I go into like Nordstrom Rack, there are racks of size 5. And a lot of my girlfriends who are Asian have really tiny feet. Not all Asian women have tiny feet. I'm not being stereotypical. I'm just saying we have a huge Asian population here. So I've never seen so many like size 5. And then after that, they have to go down into kid sizes, if somebody has a smaller foot. Very, very, petite. So I would imagine, I could be wrong, but I would bet it's a gymnast.
Yeah, I have to believe that. But so you see the sizing challenge, you see the material challenge and the turnaround time. And so, they work their magic, and Mike Rancourt, his team are often, he has so much pride in his workers. And there's some old kind of crusty Mainers that have been there for a while, that have been there for generations. And then a lot of the, young kids left Maine, right? Because the factories left. And so a lot of his newer workers are immigrants who came in, and they work together, and it's been a fascinating experience for the team. But obviously, the pride that they feel when they see the ceremonies is just over the top. And I could tell the joy that Mike had of doing this, even though it's demanding and causes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
Rancourt and Company is out of Lewiston, Maine. Growing up in New England, I knew of that company in Lewiston, Maine, because, like you said, the moccasins. You can listen to that episode and all of the episodes of the Manufacturing Report. Just go to soundcloud.com/keep-it-made-in-America. I'm Leslie Marshall. Scott Paul and I will be back with you right after this, talking about more great American-made products for the Olympics.
Whoa, a new digital music player. Thanks, Mom.
Oh, I'm glad you like it, because I can't wait to toss the big stereo. And now that we got your dad that big HD TV he wanted, we can throw out our old TV too.
Hold up. You can't just throw out electronics.
Really?
They need to be recycled or donated.
And how would we do that?
It's so easy, Mom. Today, recycling electronics is just as easy as buying them. GreenerGadgets.org has all the info. We just enter our zip code to find a certified recycling center nearby. There are thousands of them, and new ones are being added all the time. Some of our local stores are even certified recycling locations.
I like that.
Did you know that some of the stuff in our old electronics could be used to make new products and conserve natural resources?
Well, okay then. Let's gather them up. What was that website again?
We are back. I'm Leslie Marshall. I'm excited to have Scott Paul with us today, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. Always enjoy having Scott on, learn a lot, great things to talk about. But this is added fun in addition to information. So many great American-made products out there, and you're watching our Olympians and those who are part of the ceremonies surrounding the Olympics wearing the clothing. We just talked about the shoes out of Lewiston, Maine from Rancourt and Company. Let's talk about some more. Scott, thank you for holding, and welcome back. And by the way, if you want to know more about these companies, there are a number of ways to do this. One is go to the AAM website, americanmanufacturing.org. Follow them on X at Keep It Made in USA. Follow Scott on X at Scott Paul AAM. And also, Scott has a wonderful podcast, the Manufacturing Report. He is the host, and he interviews some of the owners of these great companies like Mike Rancourt, who is president of Rancourt and Company out of Lewiston, Maine. And you can get that at soundcloud.com/keep-it-made-in-America. Scott, thanks for holding again. Welcome back. Let's talk about some other manufacturers. During the telecast of the opening ceremonies of the Summer Olympic Games in Paris that so many of us have been watching, the 115 garment workers at Ferrara Manufacturing Team in New York, they were especially attuned to the red, white, and blue of Team USA. That contingent was outfitted in Ralph Lauren designed blazers and shirts, and those blazers and shirts were made in Long Island City, New York by Ferrara Manufacturing, and they have their factory in Long Island City, right? And apparently Ferrara has worked with Ralph Lauren in the past, so this was not a designer that was new to them to be working with, right?
Yeah, that's right. Ferrara is family owned. It's been around since the mid 80s. Started in the garment district, the famed garment district in Manhattan, but actually outgrew that space, and moved to Long Island City in Queens. And they have worked, they've been
That's much better than moving to China, Bangladesh, India, or Mexico.
Amen. It's good to have space problems, right? They've expanded a lot. You know, they've worked with Calvin Klein, Mizrahi, Vera Wang. They make the dress uniforms for a lot of our military branches, the real sharp blue, or wool dress uniforms that you see. And yeah, they've partnered with Polo Ralph Lauren before, and so the really spiffy blazers, the blue and white, the sharp blue and white shirts, the closing attire that I think we'll see Sunday, that looks a little bit like a NASCAR outfit, or breakdance, or whatever you want to call it. They manufactured those, and again, very, very high standards, design specifications, and an all-American supply chain, from the thread to the buttons, to the materials. And so quality job by a company that's been doing it right, that just goes to show that if some designers believe in American manufacturing, they can get the job done and do an extraordinary job. And I'm happy to see Ferrara growing.
The other thing is, I didn't know this until the research for the show, that they actually produced garments for the Olympics opening and closing ceremonies, and they've been doing it since 2014. I didn't realize it. This is not their first time at the rodeo, with the Olympics. The other thing I didn't know, I'm familiar with this company because of AIM, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I didn't know is that I knew they were family owned, but I didn't know they were women owned.
Yeah.
This is a female owned company, which makes me like them more. Sorry, being a little gender bias here. That they're women owned, union represented, 100% American made. And you talk about fabric, thread, buttons, zippers, all sourced from US manufacturers. And all I'm thinking is jobs, 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 jobs.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. And Leslie, I think you can probably appreciate this. A lot of these industries, like the garment industry, there were very few firms that held on, kept their manufacturing here. And as their workforce aged, they just kind of like faded away. And so because that experience fades away too when the folks retire. Ferrara and Gabrielle, who's the chief operating officer, and her mom, are the co-owners of the company. So it is majority female owned, which is awesome. They've started apprenticeship programs. They've started working with Gen Z and high school to recruit people, because there are, working with there's been this backlash to technology, amazingly, I think, among Gen Z and more people who want to work with their hands. And so they've been able to go in and recruit, a new generation of craftsmen and artisans to do garment manufacturing, which I think is amazing.
Yep, absolutely. Gabrielle's parents founded the company, Joseph and Carolyn Ferrara, and it was Carolyn's dream of creating a high quality, better fitting clothes in the world. And their daughter, who went to Barnard College, and if you don't know Barnard, it is a part of Columbia. When you graduate from Barnard, it says Columbia. I know this because I'm looking at colleges for my kids. And pursued a career in ad tech, and she joined the business in 2014, becoming the CEO. Now with her son Angelo, he's on board to approve the high-tech machinery, such as 3D printing, the CAD applications, laser cutting, robotic automation. So I just love it. Absolutely love it. Let's talk about Michael Lyons. Michael Lyons arrived at his office in Maine once again, but in Standish, Maine. One day, a couple of years ago, he opened an email. He was perplexed because it was a message from the Ralph Lauren Corporation asking if his company, which is called Rogue Industries, was interested in manufacturing the belts for the Team USA outfits at the opening and closing ceremonies of the Paris Olympics. And he said, quote, "We were suspicious of it at first because we get so many emails here every day. It was, wait, hold it. They want our small leather goods company to do a program for the U.S. Olympic team." So he didn't even believe it at first. He thought it was a joke or a scam. And he wasn't even going to respond, but obviously he did, and he's glad he did, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it must be something to get one of those calls. Like you're like, wait, is this a joke? I can't believe that someone from Ralph Lauren is actually calling me. And by the way, a lot of these companies do get calls from folks who want to knock off their designs or get them to
Oh,
outsource
wow,
to
I didn't think
another
of that.
country. Yeah, and so it is. So obviously when that comes, you have to pinch yourself. And Mike Lyon's, backstory is another interesting one. This company, Rogue, started out as a wallet manufacturer, but a pretty unique one. And I love this story. This is probably relatable to anybody who's done this. And I used to do this when I was in my 20s. You carry one of those big fat wallets in your back pocket. And when you sit down, it obviously over time, that's going to create some back spine and nerve issues because you're not supposed to have that big chunk like when you're sitting on your sitting in the
Right.
seat for so long. And so he's like, maybe there's a better way to do this, and designed a front pocket wallet that's sleeker, made out of leather, again made in the United States, and that's how Rogue got its start as like an innovative front pocket wallet maker. And I see these all the time now, like they're all around. Which is kind of cool. And so yeah, it was a big leap, I think, for Mike and for Rogue, which is not probably as well known, I think it's safe to say, as Rancourt
I
or
agree.
as Ferrara, to get a call from Ralph Lauren to say, hey, we want to do this belt. But not only is it going to be leather, it's going to be some woven material, and you're going to have some metal in it too. And so Mike had to source that and work through all of that. But again, how cool is that?
And also, how cool is it that somebody in Maine referred him, right, to Ralph Lauren?
Yeah, that's right.
Another company that's an American-owned, amazing American product called Sea Bags, and we've talked about Sea Bags. They have great tote bags, and they make tote bags out of recycled sailboat sails. So a lot of people in the Northeast, especially New England, have this. I'm from Massachusetts, especially the Newport gang, right? Have a bag from this company, Sea Bags, and Sea Bags referred Ralph Lauren to them, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it which is a very kind referral. And again, I'm so glad that Polo Ralph Lauren is like growing its like supplier base for this, because that's going to make all of these companies stronger and give them a little more prominence. And hopefully Americans will catch on. And every American, I don't know if they're still available, has the opportunity to buy this stuff. And obviously it's sold at a price point to make it a collectible item. But everybody can go on the Ralph Lauren website and look for the belts and the blazers and all of that, and own a little slice of history if they want to.
Right. Made in America, manufactured in America, companies American owned, American families own these, and you get a piece of something that was worn at the Olympics, and you can be a part of it. We'll be back right after this.
If you're about to purchase a new mower, chainsaw, generator, or other piece of outdoor power equipment, you need to know how to protect it. For instance, the gasoline you put in it. I'm Chris Kaiser, president of the Outdoor Power Equipment Institute. Most gas now contains 10% ethanol, and that's okay. But some gas pumps are changing. Higher ethanol gas blends, like E15, E30, and E85, may be available at a local station, and they may be cheaper. But it's harmful and illegal to use in outdoor power equipment. And what you put in your car may no longer be safe for other engines. When getting gas, look before you pump. Price is no longer the way to choose your fuel. You have to choose the right fuel, because not having the right fuel for the right product can damage or destroy the equipment. Look before you pump. Protect your equipment. Stick with E10 or less. A consumer can find out about which fuels are appropriate for outdoor power equipment use at lookbeforeyoupump.com.
Hello, I'm Leslie Marshall. We are back. My guest today is Scott Paul. He is president of the AAM, the Alliance for American Manufacturing. Check them out. Check out their website, americanmanufacturing.org. On X, follow AAM at Keep It Made in USA, and follow Scott at Scott Paul AAM. Scott, thank you for holding. Welcome back. Well, we highlighted some of these American business owners. Let's highlight an American congressman, a legislator. And that's from my state here in California. And that's somebody that I know personally, I like personally. I like what he's done, and he's done for his district, which my brother-in-law lives in, and that's Congressman Ro Khanna. He represents California, but he visited a steel town in Pennsylvania. Why on earth would he do that? Now, Elizabeth Brotherton Bunch from AAM wrote a great piece on this, talking about it's not every day that a California congressman who represents Silicon Valley, which he does, host a big event at the site of an old Pennsylvania factory. But why did he do this? Talk about this, because he has a vision. It's a vision AAM shares. And I think, certainly the majority of the working class, majority of the middle class, and I could dare say majority of voters, if you broke it down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I agree. I like him a lot. He's my in-laws member of Congress in Silicon Valley as well. And I've gotten to know him because he serves on the Select China Committee in the House of Representatives and has been really engaged there. And I've been fortunate enough to testify twice before that committee. And he was raised in the Philadelphia suburbs, and so he knows Pennsylvania, and he spent his youth there until he went off to college, and made his way to California, and so he knows a bit about the state. But here's the idea. He was one of the architects of the Chips and Sciences Act, that legislation that passed that provided public investment to rebuild the semiconductor industry in the United States, because we thought it was strategically important, especially after all the supply chain disruptions. And so as a result of that, you've seen massive investments all over the country to build new semiconductor factories. We've talked about that in the past. And I think some of the last money just went out the door recently on that. And it's all being deployed now. And we're going to see a massive scale up of semiconductor production in the United States. So Ro Khanna is like, you know what? Steel is also a critical material. And I'd like to use the industrial policy expertise that I've developed, and let's do the same thing for steel, because it faces a couple of the same challenges. China's a big player and disrupts global prices, number one. Number two, this is an industry in transition. In the case of steel, we're trying to make steel cleaner and greener and to decarbonize. And it's a very carbon intensive process, and we'll need some capital to do that. And number three, we can also help some communities that were left behind. And let's find some way to build new steel mills in towns where it's in their DNA, where they know how to do that, where they've done it for generations. And there's an interest in it and an awareness of it, but all they're missing is that capital. And if you have the public sector as a partner going to put up some money, the private sector will do the same, and you're going to get a couple of steel mills up and running again in the United States. And yes, we still have a steel industry in the United States, but it's all these incumbent mills that have been around for a long time. We haven't built a new blast furnace in the United States, and certainly not one with cleaner technology for decades. And so this is a way to do that and to make ourselves more independent in terms of steel production, which I know sounds very old because it's a material that's been around for a long time. But if you think about it, it's in almost everything that we use every day and will be for decades to come. And it's infinitely recyclable, basically, once you get it into the process. And so
by the way, used in things that really could affect our lives, vehicles. I mean, it keeps you safe. Bridges that you drive on, right? I mean, just those two examples alone, and then national security.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's steel used in weaponry.
That's right. We would run out of time before we got to the end of the list of where steel is vital to our economic security, our national security, or just stuff that we come across every day in our own lives. And so he went to Johnstown. I joined him there. The president of the Steelworkers, Dave McCall, who I know you know as well, was there. And the former mayor of Pittsburgh, Bill Peduto, great guy, was there. There were environmental leaders. There were steel leaders. There were local steel workers that were there, and so he made this about the community. And so it was great for him to come to a town like Johnstown, which really, is one of those towns that was, I think, forgotten by history and by, and has a tragic history too. And used to have a thriving Bethlehem Steel facility there a generation ago. And so he was trying to make a point. And so I liked it. And, and Rokana's point too is like, look, I know this isn't going to happen overnight. The semiconductor effort didn't happen overnight. It took us 6 years to build up support for it, but you got to get started. And this is where I want to start. And so it was great to be able to be a part of that. And I'm so thrilled that he's a leader, because there will be, and there are members of Congress who represent the steel districts as well, who say this constantly, and people are like, oh, well, that's just the steel people. So to have this guy who's immersed in industrial policy say this is important, I think helps give it a little bit of an extra lift.
Yeah, definitely. Coming from Silicon Valley, not just tech, but very cerebral part of the country. His vision is laid out in new legislation. It's called the Modern Steel Act. To your point, it would see a robust steel industry that is environmentally friendly, union represented, state of the art. And I love the fact that he wants to do it in these old steel towns, because like you said, it is in their DNA, whether it's parts of Pennsylvania, parts of Ohio, parts of Western New York. Yeah. We talk about a rust belt. Well, we have a steel belt, like you said, that, that's still there. And that was done in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. So much more to talk about with that. I'm thinking time-wise, Mark, should we move on to this other issue, or should we talk a little bit more? What do you think, Scott? Should we talk about this new bill and how it could catalyze the American steel boom?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that if that's okay, Leslie.
Yeah, absolutely. What we need, and you've said it before, is we need a renaissance of sorts with manufacturing, and steel is a big part of that manufacturing plan. We have a renaissance, period that we're going through. It's not the big boom that we'd like to see, but maybe we're headed in that direction with this American Renaissance, and especially American steel renaissance. Maybe we are at the cusp of a boom.
Yeah.
Do you think that we could be, by activation from the Modern Steel Act? You said in a speech 2 weeks ago at the Green Diamond Industrial Complex in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, with the congressman, that you think this could be maybe the spark that ignites that flame, that ignites that boom?
Yeah, and I think this is like, I'm trying to unpack this, because most people don't see this. When we're talking about the economy today, we talk about interest rates, we talk about the stock market, we talk about the job market, right? And so people don't see, the long-term future for the U.S. economy actually looks pretty good. Like, we're pretty foundationally good. And that's definitely true in the steel sector, because we have tariffs against unfair steel imports from China that have reduced that level. There's tariffs that the last administration started, but the Biden-Harris administration kept in place, and in some places expanded on some steel from the rest of the world. There's efforts now underway, and there's resources available from the Energy Department to help begin the process of decarbonization, which in the steel industry, which is expensive, complex, and will take a long time to bring down the price of that. But we're on that road, and we've created some good public demand for steel and other materials like that because of the infrastructure bill, because of the Chips and Sciences bill, and because of the clean energy bill. And again, you think of the steel that goes into wind turbines or into solar panel farms or into any of that stuff, or into building semiconductor factories or bridges. And so you have a pretty steady demand stream. So this is a good time to look to expand our footprint in the steel sector and to get back what we once had. It's not going to look like it did in the 50s. We don't want it to, but it's going to look like an awesome steel industry as we move forward. And so that's why I'm super excited about getting this process started with Ro Khanna, with the other co-sponsors of the bill, with getting some Republican support, and then starting down this road to have a not only holding steady in steel industry, but to see it push upward over the next generation, Leslie.
Thank you, Scott. Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. Like I said, find out about all these great companies and the products that they manufacture right here in the USA, and they've done it for the Olympians and those involved in the opening and closing ceremonies at the Olympics. Go to AmericanManufacturing.org. Follow AAM on X at Keep It Made in USA, and follow Scott at Scott Paul AAM. I'm Leslie Marshall.